We carry on with part two of our conversation with Sonny and Tootsy Angara, both education advocates and on a mission to improve access, proficiencies, and employability of Filipino learners.
Yeah.
Babalikan ko lang yung TESDA. That you have to create, but I'm not sure from which agency that initiative begins to make sure na yung pasahan, nasusundan din yung pathways na gusto ng bata.
Well, thankfully, the president has ordered a cluster in education. So he's ordered the three educational agencies to work together and coordinate policies, because the CHED has to give scholarships to teachers in science because we lack science teachers. It has to give scholarships for guidance counselors because we lack guidance counselors. At the same time, when you spoke about the mindset against Tech Voc graduates, it's because a Tech Voc graduate in the Philippines versus a Tech Voc graduate in Germany, for instance, they have this dual tech system, are very different. And a dual tech graduate there who works for the automotive industry will most likely get hired by Siemens or Mercedes-Benz and earn a salary equivalent to a college graduate. So I think that's the difference, because your Tech Voc graduate here, his earning potentials will not be the same as a college graduate. So but we know, looking at best practices in the world, that those worlds are converging already. They're not penthouse and basement anymore. They're converging, and there are times when one will be higher than the other. So these are especially we're talking about high tech industries and data science, things like that, cybersecurity. All of these have the potential to really overhaul some of our more traditional curricular offerings.
Sounds like a call to action for the private sector, because it's not just a whole of government approach, but whole of society. Are you getting that direction or support?
That's exactly what we need
from the
Cathy.
private sector?
And I think under the President Marcos' leadership, we are seeing that he's galvanized the private sector to action. He's created the PISAC, which has been quite a powerful tool to bridge some of the concerns of the private sector and really spur the government to action and act in a very concerted manner. So I think he did it first for infrastructure and for some of our industries, and now he's doing it for education. So I think he will focus on education in the next 3-4 years and make sure that some of the really big gaps and problems will be addressed in a concerted manner.
You talked about scholarships for teachers, but what about for science students? Because the EdCom 2, the panel just recently suggested that DepEd and the Department of Science and Technology should help raise the quota. Because yung quota ngayon, nasa 1% pa lang ata. They wanted it to be at 5%.
We've struggled so long with access that we forgot about quality. So I think now the move is towards enhancing quality, and tama yung EdCom, we're only helping 1%. So we need to up our game in that respect, and maybe even send kids abroad, because that's what a lot of our neighbors are doing. And some of if you look at Singapore, for instance, many of the government ministers were all government scholars at some point, whether a lot of them went to Oxford or Cambridge or some of the Ivy League schools on government expense. So nag-invest yung government sa kanila, and they're now reaping the returns, diba? Tayo, we had a program like that for the pension, what they call the pensionados or government scholars, but we kind of forgot about it, and because we wanted to make sure everyone had access to education, we kind of forgot about the need to kind of push the envelope also for quality. So I think that's the point of the EdCom, and definitely we're going to look at that going forward.
Was that a conscious decision on your part as parents, though, to send 2 of your 3 kids to school overseas?
Well, yeah, actually it was their choice. They wanted to go to the US. They chose their majors. Of course, they're in the middle of finding themselves, so they shifted in between, like in the middle of, like, let's say, the semester. But yes, it was conscious, because we wanted, of course, best thing that the parent can give their child is really the best education. So, but we allow them to choose their paths and to choose their universities.
Do you
and their
tell them
courses.
to remember to come back?
Oh, yes.
That's the most important thing.
How do you bring up that conversation? Like,
he says it up front.
Oh, you do. How do you say it?
You have to incentivize them somehow. I think you tell them there's more for them if they come back here in terms of opportunities and maybe even support from the parents. I don't know, but definitely, yeah, it's a concern that they might not come back. But I think the one lesson, the one good thing about studying abroad, Cathy, is the perspective it gives the kids, and they learn independence and they're exposed to, because I think you know Filipinos uh, aren't the most outward looking culture, so we need to kind of be more international in a way, uh, and be conscious of our place in the world, and our potentials, I think, and that's something that the international education gives to our kids. So.
And just to be exposed globally and just to be around peers from different countries, not just teachers and mentors, but actually to have that conversation. Like our son is in Silicon Valley in that area. And just to be exposed to all of that is actually, he's the one who said, Mama, coding is such a huge thing here. And then Sonny was talking earlier about cybersecurity, the skills that our senior high school graduates need. It's all available now in I Am the Code. They can take up cybersecurity, they can take up marketing, digital communications online, which will make them employable after high school.
Well, both of you are also educated overseas. And I'm wondering what made you come back to the Philippines? What was that biggest incentive, if you will, to come back and serve?
Well, I wanted to really come back because my heart was really I couldn't see myself living abroad or working abroad. My family was here, my friends were here, my loved ones were here, so I never really considered living permanently abroad.
How about yourself, Tootsy?
True love. He was my boyfriend.
Yeah.
Not just
I hope that's me. Huh?
No, yeah. So I was happy to actually experience studying abroad. I mean, it was, of course, we were studying data science and and statistics, and way before people were actually talking about it here. Just to be exposed, I took up integrated marketing communications, and now we're seeing what we studied then is what's being implemented now, and I'm happy to help, right? And happy to be back here. But yeah, I think I was brought here more than to serve the Philippines is true love brought me back home. It happens
She said it twice.
twice. You have
Yeah.
to say it also.
Thank you. Yeah, love. I mean, the heart. You have to listen to your heart.
Well, I'll bring it down to some realities on the ground. As I was looking at a recent report by Dr. Cal Handok of UP and the World Bank. They co-authored a paper saying that returns to college education
Mm.
are higher for those who are rich. College education for the poor does not pay much because of the quality of education. It's uneven. The rich go to UP, Ateneo, DLSU. And those who are poorer go to those with questionable quality. And the skills that they're taught are not really up to speed. When you talk about the middle jobs, ito yung pinag-uusapan nating importante para sa tech voc courses. So, how do we even begin to address this disparity? Now, yun nga, you talked about the unevenness, but it becomes even more uneven when you go to college and you see that there's a distinction between the rich and the poor.
But you really have to look at the diversity of your offerings, Cathy. And we talked about ladderized education, micro credentials. You have to have a huge menu of offerings, and those offerings parang restaurant lang yan, di ba? Kung ang gusto mong umorder ng maliit lang or yung kaya mo, umorder ka lang. Huwag kang umorder nung kung pupunta ka ng Chowking, huwag kang umorder ng Laureate, di ba? Umorder ka lang ng rice toppings mo, di ba? So dapat may ganun tayo. You just pick what ano yung kaya mo. But at all levels there is quality. That's the thing. Because now we talked about the mindset in the bias in for college education. It has sprouted up a lot of local colleges, a lot of state colleges with subpar offerings. That's the truth, no? So I think in fairness to them, the government needs to help them improve quality. But at the same time, we should also be looking at vocational, technical, and professional courses, which don't need that huge investment of 4 years, di ba? Pwedeng 1 year, tapos magtrabaho ka, tapos yung 1 year mo, 2 or 3 years ka na lang. Later on, you have that option of going back to college. Pero kung gusto mo yung trabaho mo, pwede ka na lang magtrabaho, di ba? But at the same time, there's always that opportunity for advancement at some point. The educational system, it's there in the educational system, and the information is provided to learners at all points.
In terms of the data gathering and knowing the extent of the problems, I mean, we all have them in research reports that yun sa miseducation pa lang of, ng EDCOM 2, that was a 350-page report. But to what extent is that data-driven, that you are fully informed by the real status of our education because of the data that's collected?
A lot of our policies, I think, are not always data driven. So, number one, we need to be data driven. But at the same time, we need to analyze our data even more. I don't think government agencies maximize the data they have at their disposal, and the DepEd is a prime example of that. So, we're really looking to revamp our planning based on the data we have, and really go do a deep dive because we have we have information about each of our 24 million learners, but it's just that it's contained at the schools. So maybe more people should be looking at that data and seeing how we can help our learners and give them a more personal approach, because that's the promise of technology. AI promises that it will give you what you want. Whether you're searching online, it will point you to the sites that you want. So dapat education ganun din. Kung ano yung kailangan mo, kung saan ka mahina, dun pupunta yung AI. So again, back to the digital divide, Cathy, we need to give our people knowledge about AI, because if not, maiiwan sila. Kung naiiwan na sila in the age of computers, mas maiiwan pa sila sa age of AI. That's why we need to educate them para hindi sila maiwan.
Experts say naiwanan na raw tayo. That the educational
Yes,
institutions
in terms of
and,
traditional
and the industries
yeah.
are ill prepared when it comes to AI, including generative AI.
Well, I think the dialogue, we need to ramp up the dialogue between industry and education, because really clearer, dapat two-way, di ba? They tell us what do you need, and then we also tell them, well, maybe you need to start hiring our graduates, di ba? Because where are these guys gonna go? And you tell us what skills you need so we can start teaching them in schools also. But not that, our goal is really to exact the maximum potential of each person. So it's not just the jobs, but that's a big part of it, no? So future-proof our graduates in a sense, no?
And the teachers as well. You put in 6 hours of teaching hours.
Yeah.
As required by law, they don't teach more than 6 hours.
Yes.
But where did you get that information that 6 hours per day of teaching would be the optimum level?
Actually,
for a
that's what the
teacher?
law provides. We
Do you
haven't
agree with
really
the law?
seen what science. That's the Magna Carta for public school teachers.
Do you think it needs to
We-
be changed though?
Well, what we did is we issued an order saying it's a maximum. It doesn't. If you can do less, then why not? And you want to focus on other tasks that you think will like maybe extracurricular activities. Because sometimes we were told by a famous personality we had lunch with yesterday. He went to school not because he was excited about his studies, but he was excited about the extracurricular activities, and that kept him in school. Knowing that he would be part of a singing group, and now he's a very famous singer. So that's a very powerful insight from an actual person that medyo nawawala yun sa schools natin, Cathy, because we don't have the buildable space, we don't have the time, we don't have time for sports and arts. So I think we mustn't lose sight that part of school is also being fun and engaging and getting people excited to go to school every day.
Including the teachers. Sabi nga nila, nababurden sila doon sa administrative tasks. And what you've done as a sort of a stopgap is have them on a flexible mode, but on the matatag curriculum. But
Yes.
perhaps you can define for us what flexible means, because we're
Mm.
also having to need that learning recovery plan
Yeah.
post-pandemic
Yeah.
within the curriculum.
Flexible means they can determine their classes between 45 minutes to 1 hour. They can be as long as 1 hour, can be as little as 45 minutes, and they can do anywhere up to 6 hours of teaching, but not. And if they have to do more. It has to be kailangan willing yung teacher, kaya niya, at mababayaran siya for overtime. So, fair work, fair pay. So we're trying to really make sure that the traditional teacher load and we're really looking after their well-being. Kasi sabi nga ni Presidente, alagaan natin yung ating mga teachers. They are the foundation of our system. So we're also looking at the mental health of our teachers, not just our learners, and also they need to be taught about technology, because how will they impart that to our students kung sila mismo hindi nila gamay yung teknolohiya, di ba?
You've created a task force to address that in a holistic way. Do you have initial results from that?
Yes, and we need, of course, it requires more injection of resources. We need more administrative assistants to do a lot of the work. Because when we asked the teachers not to do it, the principals had to do it. So we need someone to really do some of these tasks that are uh, are not directly related to teaching. So we need to, in a way, we need to revamp the HR of a school.
And the upgrading of teachers into qualified teachers. The lack of qualified teachers has really been a perennial problem. I came across your late dad's statement in the Senate, and this goes all the way back to May 2010. That's 14 years ago. And what did he say? He called on all to address the lack of qualified teachers in the country. And that problem still stays 14 years on. What do you think's contributed to that?
I think we have a pipeline of teachers, Cathy, but I think we used to have normal schools that really focused on teaching and teaching methods. We used to have maybe around 8 to 10, Philippine Normal University, Leyte Normal University, Cebu Normal University, and their job was really to just focus on teaching and producing good teachers. But the system has morphed in such a way that they are do-it-all universities now. So maybe we need to kind of go focus again on producing good teachers. In Finland, you cannot be a public school teacher unless you graduate in the top 1/3 of your high school class. So dun pa lang, yung mga tinatanggap sa mga education courses are graduate from the top 1/3 of their class. They did this reform back in the 80s. And now they're reaping the benefits of. It's just one of many reforms, not just the only reform.
Bakit kaya napag-iwanan? We had it going before, pero hindi natin napagpatuloy.
Um, I think we're being pulled in a lot of different directions, because when we made college education free, a lot of the resources that maybe should have gone to basic education now you're being spread more thinly. So now we support even students in UP are free. Can you imagine? But if you look at the students who go to UP, marami may kaya. Marami galing Ateneo, galing Lasal, galing private school. So maybe it's a controversial opinion, but I'm not afraid to say it, is that we shouldn't be subsidizing the kids of the rich, honestly. But that's what we're doing under the existing implementation. I think we need to refocus the free college education to be a subsidized for deserving students. And that way, there's no crowding out effect. You don't crowd out the ones who really need it, but you subsidize the ones who really need it. And then those who na may kaya, I mean, what's 200,000 pesos to a rich family, Cathy? That's not even a vacation for their family, and they're more than willing to pay that. And yet we insist on giving it as a matter of a free college education.
Do you agree with Sonny? His controversial opinion?
No, completely. Yeah.
What makes it a compelling argument for you?
No, for me, it's if they can afford it, just to be in the University of the Philippines is a gift, right? Because that's top of the top. I mean, that's the best students in the Philippines, and just to be given access to being there. And if you can afford it, then yeah, so be it. They should be able to actually pay for their education because they're going to benefit from it in the long run.
As to the teachers, so they have first asked for better conditions at work, making sure that they're not burdened by administrative tasks, but they've also continued to ask for higher pay,
Yes.
even as we already have the salary standardization law. What do you think is needed to satisfy our teachers in terms of compensation?
Well, it would be nice if we could raise teacher salaries, and the president did that with this executive order for salary standardization 6. But the problem is that applies to all, or the situation that applies to all government employees. So I think what teachers are looking for is at some point is something that applies to them alone, the way maybe other countries have done it. But it's easier said than done, Cathy, because you're talking about 860,000 teachers. So you just increased it by 100 pesos or 1,000 pesos per teacher, which people will laugh at. But that's already you're talking about close to 1 billion pesos already just for that small amount. So I think they're not all are asking for higher salaries. Some are asking for greater freedom, less administrative work. They're asking for people to assist them in other tasks. Some people are asking just for support, logistical support, for their classes. And we as a department talagang we have to acknowledge that maybe nagkulang kami in the past in providing the support for our teachers, and that we must promise them a better delivery of services that will enable them to teach in the best environment under the best circumstances possible.
So for those asking for a salary increase, is there one promised in, say, the next few years?
Well, it was just given, so maybe that will be phased on the next 3 years. So that salary increase is not a one-time increase, Cathy. It's something that will happen over the next 3 years.
Now that you mentioned budgets, you just went through you hurdled the first round.
The committee levels
the committee
of both
levels,
House and the Senate.
both House and the
Yes.
Senate, and it came up to a little under 800 billion pesos. How are you going to make use of this money then to deploy the 5-point agenda that you've laid out as DepEd chief?
You know, Cathy, people always say DepEd has the biggest budget, which is true. We have the biggest budget, but we also have the biggest manpower component. And most people do not know that 70% of our budget goes to salaries, the payment of salaries, and a very small amount, or not a very small amount, but a relatively smaller amount goes towards building classrooms, buying computers, and things like that. So that's something in the future. Hopefully, we hope this part for capital expansion can increase later on, because these are the sources of our shortfalls, meaning the shortage in classrooms. You're talking about maybe 160,000 classroom deficit. There are 2,000 schools without electricity. There are maybe over 30,000 schools which are underpowered. They don't have, if we want to provide them computers and with AI, which requires a lot of power, then we need to increase their capacity. So yun pa lang, basics pa lang yun. There's a lot needed. So talagang that's one aspect I'd like to see improve. And in fact, we're gonna push for more partnerships, maybe with multilateral organizations like maybe ADB, World Bank, who can provide us assistance in this respect.
So 800 billion, that's about 3 to 4% of GDP?
I'm not sure what the GDP is anymore, no, but it's about maybe 1/6 of the national budget, 1/7, 1/6 of the national budget, and but if you work it out, it only amounts to 30,000 pesos per learner. So that 800 billion sounds like an awful lot, but you divide it by the number of people you're using it for, it's only about 30,000 per learner.
But when you talk
So-
about the global standard, they talk about 6%. So
We're probably that's a
we're
for the
well
whole
below that.
education sector, Cathy,
Do
and
we have to
DepEd.
be at 6%, you think?
I think we should aim for it. We've hovered near 4% in the past. I think maybe 3 years ago, I think we were at 3.9%, and in the 80s we were at 2%. So I think that gives us cause for hope that our successive administrations have produced the fiscal space but we must make that political. But the choice to go to 6% is a political decision that requires political will. So I think that's something that maybe if we care about it enough, we should ask it from our leaders like myself.
But the received understanding is, yeah, as we spend less, we perform poorly. But there are those who think that huge budgets don't necessarily create the positive educational outcomes you wish. Like, for instance, Singapore.
Yes.
It did cite a study from the OECD saying that the higher expenditures do not guarantee better student
yes.
performance.
That's true. There are countries, I don't want to mention them because but there are countries who spend more than us, maybe 3 times more than us, but the outcomes are not that far. And Vietnam spends maybe just $1,000 or less than $2,000 more than us. We spend about $11,000, and they spend maybe 13,000 for in the total, and their outcomes are exceed ours. So in PISA exams, they're closer to the OECD average. Tayo, nasa baba tayo. So it's not always a question of resources, although resources are a big help.
But so there's hope. At where we're at, maybe 3 to 4% of GDP, there is hope. Just to
I
make
think so.
sure that there is a good use of the resources.
I think so because optimal use of what you have, it begins with that, and secondly is maybe growing the pie through other sources, through the private sector, through multilateral organizations. You try to really maximize or leverage on whatever is possible.
And also cleaning up the ranks in terms of the vacant posts. You've made that a priority in your first few weeks. You wanted DepEd to fill all the vacant posts. What's your
Yes.
absorptive capacity looking like right now?
Well, some posts really cannot be filled, are really difficult to fill. Like we have a vacancy of 4,400 guidance counselors. But to be a licensed guidance counselor, you need a master's degree in, and there are no graduates in some regions. So it's almost impossible to fill those positions. But in terms of other positions, like teaching positions, those are easier to fill. So there we can absorb as long as the supply of teachers is there. It's a question of what is being supplied. We need more science teachers, but there are very few people taking. We need more math teachers, but konti lang ang kumukuha ng math dahil mahirap siya. So many people do not focus on math or science when they take up education.
Mahirap pa talaga?
Yung math,
Ang math,
yeah,
mahirap ba
there are less
talaga?
people who take it up apparently. So we have to find ways to
How do you
shift
change
this.
that mindset? I mean, we can't accept this. That math is
That's
hard.
not the
just
mindset, but if you
because
give
I can't get
scholarships, then there'll be
perfect.
more
Yeah.
takers, Cathy, right? If you can offer free tuition for an education a graduate who focuses on math or science, then certainly that shifts the calculation or the equation, and more people will enroll in
And
those
also to keep
programs.
them here, no?
Yeah.
Because
Give
they
them
tend,
incentives.
yeah, and the incentives to keep them here because a lot of them go overseas,
Yes.
which isn't bad if you know that they're gonna come back sometime soon and contribute that,
Yeah.
extra knowledge.
Yeah.
True.
What happens now is they're invited on study tours, and sometimes they don't return. Cathy. They're invited for study tours abroad, and once they see that magaling, they're made an offer already, and they don't come back. Those are true stories.
What incentives do you have in mind to make them stay and
You
make
know,
them take math, science?
At the end of the day, we were talking about heart. People really want to be with their families. They want to retire with their families at home. So that's already an incentive. Innately, they feel that way. So, but if they have to get the knowledge abroad, and of course make a little bit more money abroad in order to build their retirement here, then so be it, right? But at the end of the day, maybe like give them scholarships, right, for 4 years, and then the promise to come back and serve. They will because this is their home.
I think that's a great that's really the heart determines a lot. But if you could also help them in their career progression and provide them, if they know that they will be promoted in a certain number of years, and that the way is free for them to eventually reach the top of their profession, which is um, maybe to be head teacher, principal, etc. Which I think the president has provided through the career progression and the creation of new teaching positions. I think that's also a big come on to our teachers.
So, given all the problems we've talked about over the last maybe hour or so, how do you think, Tootsie, from your end, you find yourself in a helpful position to pursue what Sonny has laid out?
Well, there are the problems and then there are challenges, but there's always so many solutions and so many people willing to help out. A lot of people championing education, not just from DepEd, from the private sector, even other public servants and other government agencies. The partnerships are great help. So I said it was so incredibly easy to support someone with a shared vision, same values, purpose. And it's not just for me, but I think a lot of people are supporting Sonny and his department. So I think it's exciting times ahead. There's so many new partnerships forged that I think he'll be able to announce in the near future. But again, really the great equalizer is AI. We shouldn't be afraid of it. It's available and it's right then and there. All we need is access to it. The skills are all there, available for any Filipino student to actually use and grow from. So exciting times ahead and excited to be here for him.
With all the support you're getting, how many years do you think the timeline that you have to pull together our educational ecosystem and pull up our ratings in
Yeah.
PISA?
Well, I'm
For STEM.
under no illusions that we'll be able to solve all these problems under my watch, Cathy. But we have to plant the seeds. So I think we're planting a lot of seeds now, and I think if we continue and we water these seeds, eventually they will all these trees will bloom. But if you study countries, education reform is a slow burn thing. It's never instant coffee. It's ano yan, talagang pangmatagalan yan. So, uh, but many countries nagulat din sila. You'd be surprised, no? Like Germany, England, they did not do as well initially as they thought they would in things like PISA exams, and that led them to revamp their educational system. And the same thing is happening to us now, I think. So we're not alone in that respect, and there are many lessons to be learned. And a lot of technology is available, as mentioned by Tootsy, to really leapfrog a lot of our traditional. If we look at things through a traditional lens, then we'll really be very depressed. But I think if you look at it through new lenses that involve technology, that involve partnerships and collaboration, then you'll be excited for the future.
If Dad were still alive today and knowing that you pursued that education path, and now you're the
Yeah.
DepEd chief, what do you think he'd tell you?
He'd tell me, you do this, you do that.
Pa rin.
Because
Pa rin.
he's part of that generation where you know the teacher was once seen as the oracle, diba? Everything emanates from them. And I think our parents' generation was also that oracle generation where you do everything we say. But we learned the hard way with our kids, and you know that because you have kids also, Cathy, that you have to speak with the kids and not just speak to them and down to them and order them. Kailangan, it has to be a real, honest to goodness conversation.
So nung naging law ang K to 12, how did the kids react? How about 2 more years in senior high school?
That's
What
the
was
thing,
their
Cathy, because
reaction?
in private school, there's no change. They only change the grades because they already had
Mhm.
a 12-year cycle. It's public schools who had to change. A lot of the private schools already were in the 12-year education. So that's the thing that maybe yung mga kababayan natin should realize na sakripisyo to dahil galing kayo sa 10 years, magta 12 years tayo. Pero bakit yung mga galing pribadong school, magandang kinabukasan? Kasi nag-invest sila sa education. So maybe we need to think along those lines also.
Before we wrap, I wanted to get your ideas on really just being the total, maybe lifelong learner as a parent, as an educator, being on the parenting side, and also being a student, a lifelong student of what life gives us. What would your advice be, young or old, those listening and watching us now?
Actually, maybe always stay curious, never stop learning, read a lot of books. It's never too late to learn something new. I read in a book last night, every 3 months, do something adventurous. So just the love of learning and keep engaging with different kinds of people from different walks of life, because you'll never know. You're going to learn something from each person that you meet, everybody that you meet as part of your journey, and be grateful for everyone because that person is teaching you something every day.
What's the next adventurous thing you're thinking about?
Oh, a lot. I have plans, but can I tell them no? I wanted to join the Air Force and
Oh, you did?
apply as a
You do?
reservist.
Oh my goodness, it's not too late then. I mean, are you going to be
Yeah.
drafting quite soon? Nagpaalam ka na ba?
I told her she has to wake up at 4 a.m. and she's
So
having
I'm ex-
second thoughts after that.
I'm excited about it. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Oh, great. So
I'm
it's
going to
on.
Pag-asa Island to visit
Oh,
the last mile
wow.
schools there. I'm super excited about that.
Well, that calls for a second interview with you and that experience itself. Nagpaalam ba siya sa'yo bago siya
Yeah, now I have to
reservist?
go also because I have to keep an eye on her.
Hala.
But as what you said about lifelong learning, I think number one, the most successful people in the world are lifelong learners. And if you never stop learning, then you also increase the chances of being successful in whatever. A friend of ours said, you can learn whatever you want. In these days, there's so much knowledge available, not outside of school, and as a free resource, and we're not maximizing a lot of these. So yun lang, just, diba? What did the Steve Jobs say? Stay hungry, stay foolish. Keep. Don't think you know everything, and always be receptacle for things that are new.
Who do you look up to?
Well, my father was my idol in politics. I look up to the president. I think he's a great role model. He works very hard, gets up early, and is very efficient with his time. I think, and he's a good leader because he lets us accomplish goals through our own methods. So I think I admire that about him.
I look up to, of course, my mother. She was my backbone. When she passed away, I told people I felt like my backbone was taken away. But they said, but she built yours. Same with Sonny. His dad built his backbone. And we're very lucky to just have had them in our lives.
It's all in the family, and education starts in the home. I really appreciate this conversation. I know you're very busy, but this calls for a second interview from whence you fulfill
Yeah.
all that's been set out there. All the best, and thank you so much,
Yeah.
Secretary
Thank you very
Sonny
much,
and
Cathy.
Tootsy.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the time.
Hopefully,
Thank-
we'll be talking about our achievements rather than our plans
Yes,
in the
of
next
course,
interview.
of course. We'll put
Yeah.
that in the schedule.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Cathy. Grateful to have been able to share our advocacy. Thank you.
As I am too. Thank you, Tootsy. Catch us again next Thursday at 9 p.m. Philippine Standard Time on One News. You can also check out the long conversation on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And if you haven't done so, like or follow my social media pages. I'm Cathy Yang, and this is Thought Leaders.
Sakto.